Well, I have been blessed that I have made some records with incredible drummers. I mean, Dom from Muse is unbelievable. Trey Cool is great. He's got the fastest, tightest hi-hat in the world. Jimmy Chamberlin from Smashing Pumpkins, Taylor Hawkins, Steve Shelley from Sonic Youth is incredible. Dave Grohl, they're all geniuses in a way, and all different. You know, they all have a different style of how they play. One of the things that Dave Grohl does is he looks at drum parts as a very hooky part of the song. Like he writes motifs, like Phil's going into choruses, and he repeats them a lot. He doesn't really play sort of free-form fills, if you ever noticed his playing. It's like he has intro fills and fills coming out in and out of choruses, and they're always pretty much the same. You know, he really tries to make those an integral part of the song. And I think that's rubbed off on Taylor. I mean, Taylor's an incredible drummer too. He can also go off on jazz chops, you know. But I think just the nature of how the Foos write 4/4 songs, you know, Dave now being the leader, the guitarist and singer. Taylor in some ways has his own style, but he does emulate that theory to a certain extent by trying to come up with hooks going into the, you know, different sections of the song. And I think that's an important part of the Foo Fighters sound. Well, Dom is one of the nicest guys in the world. He has incredible chops. I mean, he can play almost anything. I mean, to me, he's sort of the Neil Peart of this generation. I really think so. I mean, he's so gifted. And he would just ask me, he'd be playing a fill, and he'd say, should I play this or this? And he would play, you know, like every fill he would play would be mind-blowing, you know. And I'm like, well, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I would have to take my drummer chops hat off and put on my production hat and try to think what is going to work for the song. You know, what's the best fill for any particular section, or what's the best groove for any particular section. And he's really good at that. As a three-piece band, I mean, Muse are so gifted, though. They're some of the best musicians I've ever worked with in a rock band. I mean, incredible. And I went to see him play a bunch of times on the last tour, and kind of blows my mind. Dom, before he plays, warms up for like over an hour. He has a full kit next to their dressing room, and he starts playing. And he plays hard like he's playing a real show. So when he walks on stage, he's completely warmed up, sweating. You know, it's like he's already halfway through a show in a way. And it just kind of blew my mind that he could do that and then go out and play for 2.5 hours. You got to have your shit together to do that. Well, Jimmy is an incredible drummer. He has this magic feel that nobody else I know really can touch in a way. He's not a great 4/4 click track drummer. That's just not his forte. He's got this sort of push-pull thing where he's kind of pushes the front of the bar and then pulls back, and it gets this very hypnotic groove. And all the grace notes that he can do on the snare and the hat, especially with his foot, keeping time with his foot and letting the kit roll around. It's like an automatic shaker track or a maraca track. He and Billy Corgan really have a special dynamic how they play, and it's very hypnotic. And I think that was the secret to the Pumpkin sound is it had this kind of sexy swagger in a way, very hypnotic. And the only way I can describe it is to just have this push-pull thing, and they were locked into each other. And you can hear it, especially on, well, both Gish and Siamese Dream, but especially on Siamese Dream. I mean, there's a lot of songs that just have this incredible feel to them. And, you know, we tried using click tracks on a couple songs, and I think we only used it maybe on one, or maybe one or two on the really slow songs on Siamese Dream. The rest of them, we would just go for takes that felt right, and it's great working with him. He every now and then he would play these kind of crazy monster buzz fills too, you know, coming into sections that were pretty incredible. Like the end of Cherub Rock, there's that monster drum fill. You know, it's a monster. Well, one of the things I brought into the making of Not Your Kind of People was after finishing Wasting Light with the Foos, that record was all about performance because it wasn't done in Pro Tools, and you can't cut things up and copy and paste around or use sound replacer. So you have to make sure the sound is good, and you have to go for real-time performance. And so I did a lot more of that in the Garbage record. There's some spots that are kind of loose, at least by Garbage standards, and we just decided to leave them that way. And I think part of what people respond to in rock and roll is the feel. It's not things being perfect. And I think, you know, I love Pro Tools, but there's that tendency to make everything tighter and tighter and perfect to a certain extent. I mean, I hear a lot of records that are made that way, and we deliberately try to avoid doing that as much as possible on the new Garbage record. The hardest thing for me was getting my chops up, because I really hadn't played drums for 7 years. You know, I might have occasionally done a track in the studio, but you know, I would do a couple takes, put it in Pro Tools and cut it up, you know, and use what I wanted to use. But when we started tracking some of the sessions, I got terrible blisters on my fingers, and I would wake up in the morning, every muscle in my body would be killing me. And then Taylor and Dave were the ones who said, "Come on, you got to get Garbage back together. Go on tour, man. You got to go on tour." And then I really had some panic and anxiety attacks, because that's a whole different mentality when you have to get in shape to go play for 2 hours every night. And it took a while. I mean, I feel like just now I'm starting to get my muscle memory back. A lot of the old songs are pretty easy to play, but the new ones I'm still figuring out parts, you know, because some of the things we did on the record, we changed things a lot. You know, there may be a 60-40 blend or 50-50 blend between electronics and live drums, and sometimes in the mix certain sections would lean one way or the other. And live, I mean, it's a whole different thing, but we're still trying to emulate the sound of the record, but also, you know, go off and do our own thing with it. But it's been challenging, and as I said, I think just now we've probably done, you know, over 20 shows. I think all of us are finally starting to get a little bit of a groove together.